All right, so today we're diving deep into the world of Russian proxies.
Ooh, interesting.
Yeah, we've got a ton of research here, articles and stats, the whole nine yards.
Sounds intense.
And honestly, it's way more relevant than you might think, even if you aren't a tech person.
More than just like VPNs and stuff.
Right, exactly. We're talking about digital disguises and, internet freedom and like a whole other side of the internet.
So like the dark web.
Well, not exactly the dark web, but kind of similar in the sense of hidden parts of the internet.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
Good. Now, one crazy thing is over 65% of websites are actually blocked in Russia.
Wow, seriously. 65%, that's most of the internet.
It is. It's a huge chunk. So, imagine being able to browse the web as if you were actually in Moscow.
Like I had a secret Russian identity.
Yeah, exactly. What could you access or learn or even just experience differently? It's pretty wild to think about.
All right, so let's break this down.
Sure.
What exactly is a Russian proxy? I mean, I get it's some kind of mask for your computer, but like, how does that actually work?
Okay, so think about it like this.
Okay.
Every device, that's online has this unique ID.
Like a social security number?
Kind of. It's called an IP address. It's basically like a digital fingerprint for your device.
Ah, okay.
So when you use a Russian proxy, what you're doing is you're essentially borrowing the IP address of a computer that's actually in Russia.
Sneaky?
Yeah. So to all the websites and everything, it looks like you're in Russia, even if you're, on a beach in Bali.
So you're not just hiding your location, you're actually like take on a whole new one.
Exactly. It's pretty clever when you think about it.
So is it all about just like sneaking past those restrictions, like, getting around blocks and stuff?
That's a big part of it, yeah. But it goes way deeper.
Really? Like what?
Well, the research talks about things like market research.
Oh, yeah, for companies?
Yeah, for companies trying to understand, like, the Russian market and even, academic work for researchers.
Huh. So they can see what's going on over there.
Exactly, like what websites look like to a Russian consumer or accessing maybe a database that's only available in Russia.
That's actually pretty interesting.
It is, and then there's this whole privacy angle, too.
Oh, right, because you're kind of anonymous.
Right. By using that Russian IP address, you're masking your real IP address, which makes it way harder for websites and companies to, track your every move online.
So it's good for people who are, like, really concerned about data privacy and all that.
Exactly. And then there's this other thing called data scraping, which is basically, like, collecting a ton of information from websites.
Data scraping. Is that legal?
Well, it depends.
Oh, boy.
Some websites try to block it, but a Russian proxy can help you bypass those restrictions, which makes data gathering way easier.
Huh. So there's a lot more to this than I realized.
Right. So we've got access to blocked content, market research, privacy, data scraping. It's a whole world.
Yeah, it is. It's way more than I thought.
And, one thing that really struck me while I was reading all this is what it says about, like, internet freedom and access to information.
Oh, I see what you mean.
Like, we just kind of take it for granted that we can go anywhere online.
Yeah, just type in an address and boom, we're there.
Yeah. But it's so different for people in other places, like Russia.
Right, where so much is blocked.
Exactly. So we're so used to thinking of the internet as this open space, but it's actually really fragmented and controlled in a lot of ways.
Yeah, kind of like a bunch of little internets all connected.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. And proxies, especially ones in places like Russia, with all these restrictions, they really highlight those limitations.
They show us what we don't have access to.
Yeah, makes you question that whole idea of a global internet when the experience can be so different depending on, like, literally where you are in the world.
That's a really good point.
So even if someone never uses a Russian proxy themselves, just understanding, like, how they work and why people use them can totally change how you think about the internet as a whole,
Yeah, it makes you realize how much we take for granted.
Exactly.
It really does kind of open a window into a different digital reality.
It does.
One that really challenges, like, all our assumptions about online freedom and, like, how we access information and stuff.
It's a whole other world out there.
It really is.
It's pretty wild to think that just accessing, like, a website could be so different depending on where you are in the world.
Yeah.
Like, what if someone actually wants to, explore that other side of the internet? Using a Russian proxy, where would they even begin?
Well, there are tons of proxy providers out there.
Oh, wow.
But it's like each one has its own, pros and cons and quirks.
So how do you even choose?
Well, first you got to remember that the whole proxy landscape is, like, constantly changed.
Oh, really? Why is that?
Well, for one thing, you've got this constant battle between, like, the proxy providers
Okay.
and the websites that are trying to block them.
Oh, so they're always trying to, like, outsmart each other?
Yeah, it's like this cat and mouse game,
I see. So the providers are trying to, like, mask their proxies?
Exactly. And the websites are getting more and more sophisticated at, detecting and blocking them.
So it's like an arms race.
Exactly.
Wow, that's intense.
And then on top of that, you've got new technologies popping up all the time.
Like what?
Well, like residential proxies, for example.
Residential proxies?
Yeah, these are really interesting.
Okay.
They actually use IP addresses from like real residential internet connections.
Oh, wow. So like from people's homes.
Yeah, which make them way harder to detect and block.
So that's a game changer.
Yeah, it really is.
But with all this like innovation and stuff, are there any like ethical concerns?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
But using proxies raises all sorts of questions about, you know, bypassing restrictions that are set by content creators or companies.
So it's not just about the tech stuff.
Right. It's about like the bigger picture.
The ethics of it all.
Exactly. So it's definitely not a black and white issue.
So like, what's an example of that?
Okay, so let's say you've got a streaming service.
Okay.
They often have these like geographical licensing agreements. So they can only show certain content in certain regions.
Right, right.
So if you use a proxy to get around that,
Yeah.
you could technically be violating their agreement.
Like sneaking into a movie premiere early.
Exactly.
Okay, so that makes sense.
And then there's this whole question of fairness
Oh, yeah.
when it comes to data scraping.
Mm,
You know, companies put a lot of resources into building their websites
yeah,
and, you know, making information available.
right.
So when you scrape that data without their permission, it can be seen as like taking advantage of their work.
Exploiting them.
Yeah, exactly.
So even though these proxies are, powerful tools,
Yeah,
you got to use them responsibly.
absolutely. It's all about being aware of the impact of your actions, you know.
Being a good digital citizen.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've talked about like the ethics and the tech stuff, but for someone who's like ready to dive in, what are some tips for choosing a provider?
Okay, well, first of all, do your research.
Okay.
Compare different providers, look for ones with a good reputation,
Right.
clear pricing, good reviews, that kind of stuff.
So don't just like click on the first ad you see.
No, take your time, figure out what you need,
Okay.
what your budget is, what features are important to you.
Right, because some are faster.
Exactly. Some prioritize anonymity. It all depends on what you're using it for.
Makes sense. And once you've picked one, are there any like precautions?
Oh, yeah. Always use a strong, unique password.
Oh, okay.
Don't reuse passwords from other accounts. That's super important.
Basic password hygiene.
Exactly. And be careful about what information you share. Like, avoid logging into anything sensitive,
Makes sense.
banking, email, that kind of stuff.
Like using public Wi-Fi.
Exactly. And keep your antivirus and anti-malware software up to date.
Oh, right, to protect yourself.
Exactly. You know, it's always better to be safe than sorry.
So it's all about being smart and proactive.
Right. And remember, even with all the precautions, there's always going to be some level of risk.
Right, because it's the internet.
Exactly. So just be mindful, you know.
Okay, so we've covered the ethics, the providers, the safety tips, but I'm curious, have you ever actually used a Russian proxy yourself?
I have, actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I was doing some research on online censorship
Oh, wow.
for a project, and I needed to see what websites and social media platforms were blocked.
Oh, that's fascinating. What was it like?
It was really eye-opening. I mean, I saw a whole different side of the internet.
Different information?
Yeah, different perspectives, different opinions, things I wouldn't have seen otherwise.
Wow, so it really is like a parallel digital universe.
It really is, and it made me realize how much our online experience is shaped by, you know, these filters and restrictions.
And we don't even know it.
Exactly.
So beyond the research aspect, did you like learn anything personally?
Definitely. It really reinforced, like, the importance of critical thinking
Mm-hmm.
and media literacy, you know?
Yeah.
Just because you see something online
Yeah.
doesn't mean it's true or unbiased, you know?
Right. Always got to check the source.
Exactly. So it was really valuable, not just for the research itself, but for my own, like, digital awareness.
So using a proxy wasn't just about access. It was about like changing how you think about the information you see online.
Exactly.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it was a good reminder that the internet, you know, for all its good points, it's still shaped by all these, like, borders and rules and choices we make.
And that's something we don't always think about.
Yeah, for sure.
So it sounds like using a Russian proxy, it's not just about, watching a movie or something.
No, not at all.
It's like a whole new way of looking at the internet,
It is, and it kind of brings up a question for me.
Yeah.
Like, what does this all mean for the average person?
Right. Is this just like a techie thing?
Yeah, or is this something we should all be thinking about?
I mean, most people probably don't even know what a proxy is.
Right. But even if you never actually use one,
Yeah.
I think understanding the whole concept can really change how you see the internet.
How so?
Well, we tend to think of the internet as this, like, free and open space.
Right, yeah.
But the reality is it's a lot more complicated than that.
Yeah, because what you can see or access.
Right. Even, like, the prices you pay online,
Oh, wow.
it could be totally different depending on where you're connecting from.
So even though we talk about the internet being global,
Yeah,
it's actually pretty fragmented,
it is. Yeah,
which raises all sorts of questions.
totally. Like, if a huge chunk of the internet is blocked, in some countries.
Yeah.
What does that mean for freedom of information, or cultural exchange?
It's like a whole other layer of the digital divide.
Ex-
It's easy to just assume everyone has the same access we do,
Right.
but that's definitely not the case.
And then there's the whole thing with companies using geotargeting.
Oh,
They
yeah.
have to, customize their products and services.
Based on where you are.
Exactly. Sometimes it's just about, language or currency.
Okay.
But sometimes they actually limit features
Oh, wow.
or even charge different prices depending on your location.
That's crazy. I didn't realize that.
Yeah, so understanding how proxies work,
Yeah.
it can make you more aware of all that stuff.
And how it might be affecting you.
Exactly. It's about being a more informed user.
So it's not just about accessing blocked content.
No, it's about, understanding the whole system.
Yeah, the power dynamics.
Yeah, and who controls what you see.
So to wrap things up,
Yeah.
our deep dive into Russian proxies, it's been about a lot more than just the technical details.
Right.
It's been about, digital disguises,
Yeah.
but also about understanding the limitations of the internet.
The complexities.
Exactly. The impact of censorship, and the importance of online freedom.
All really important stuff.
It is. And it all comes back to that question we started with.
Yeah.
What could you experience if you could see the internet from a completely different perspective?
It's a good question to think about.
It is. And for our listeners, I'll leave you with this.
Okay.
If you had the chance to explore the Russian internet just for a day,
Hmm.
what would you be most curious to see?
That's a great question.
What insights could you gain about the world or about information or even about yourself?
That's a good one to ponder.
It is. So keep those questions in mind as you continue your, digital adventures.
Good advice.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.
It was fun. 5, 6, 7.